The federal budget, asking the question that every man on the radio that you've ever listened to seems to be asking. Where is the money going? Precisely what is happening to all the money that Americans pay into taxes? Let us take a look. Last class, we already explored how certain basics of taxes work. Now, I'm going to show you all a little bit of the breakdown on how the federal government spends the money it takes in tax revenue. So, this was the 2017 budget. As you can see here, the total spending is $4.0 trillion. Now, of that spending, 2.5 of it is considered mandatory spending. It includes programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other social programs. Then there is discretionary spending, which is $1.2 trillion, as you can see. It includes things such as defense and non-defense budgets. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what those two are. Specifically, what is the difference between mandatory spending and discretionary spending? And what is the outgrowth of all this? Why are certain things discretionary and why are certain things not discretionary? And you might want to ask yourself, is that the best breakdown? Now, one last thing, you'll be noticing that there's a gray piece that's not part of either, and it says interest. What that refers to is the $263 billion that is paid on the interest of federal debts. So, this is the budget revenues. So, in 2017, the government took in, or was operating off of for the budget, $3.3 trillion. So now, please note, that means there is a discrepancy. The government only took in $3.3 trillion, but is planning to spend $4.0 trillion, which means that there's another $0.7 trillion that is, as of now, unaccounted for. And so that has to be made up somewhere. That's being put into the national debt. Now, as you can also see, of this, most of the money comes from individual income taxes, specifically $1.6 trillion, with the other $1.2 trillion coming from payroll taxes. And then, of course, there's $1.4 from other taxes. So let's look at some definitions you need to become aware of. Revenue. Very simple. Revenue is the money that the government has accrued through taxes. So that can be any of the taxes we talked about yesterday. When you're 18, you go and buy a pack of cigarettes. I would not recommend that you do so, but if you are choosing to make this poor health decision, some of that is going to go to paying government taxes. When you pay a toll on a government road, that goes to state taxes. That's not part of these federal taxes. But the money you pay on cigarettes, that's going to go to a state tax. When you're old enough to buy liquor, taxes on that are going to be part of state taxes. Flying on airlines, you're going to be paying a federal tax. Now, so, that's some of the money you're going to be looking at. And it's from this revenue, either on excise taxes or on your income taxes that you pay. If you inherit anything, get something as a gift, you still have to pay taxes. All that contributes to that revenue. So, spending. Simply put, it's the amount of money that the government spends. Not terribly not difficult. It's fairly self-explanatory, this one is. Now, discretionary spending. Now, discretionary spending is spending that is left up to Congress's judgment, the discretion of lawmakers. So this is the area of the federal budget that Congress has to decide. As you remember, Congress is the branch of the United States government that is responsible for writing laws. So because of that, it is them who are responsible for deciding how it is that the federal budget is going to be set. They are the ones who make the annual bills that decide how much the government is going to spend and what exactly it's going to be spending that money on. Now, mandatory spending, which, as you should remember, made up most of the budget. This involves benefits programs that are established by law. So what are these programs? These are sometimes called entitlement programs. And The word entitlement, though used correctly in here, has a crude and negative connotation. So let me see if I can try to explain it a little better. A lot of times when people say the word entitlement, they think of it in terms of an individual who feels entitled. And in that context, it takes on the feel of sort of a whiny individual who wants something or feels that the world owes them something. That's not necessarily the way this is being used in legal terminology. It is the way that many people discuss these programs. To be entitled to something simply means that it's what's owed you. Whatever you are owed by right is what you are entitled to. So what this means is that these are programs, usually with their own rules on how to get into them. These are long-term programs established by the government, and usually there is some criteria for getting in. So examples of these include things like Social Security. Now, the individual is entitled to Social Security because they pay into it. So whenever you make money in a job where taxes are collected, not an off-the-books job, but a job where taxes are collected, some of that is taken out of your paycheck and is put away into the Social Security program, with the understanding that when you turn 65 years old, that money will be there for you. Have that money. So as well as that, you are entitled to that. If you pay into this system your entire life, then you deserve to have that system there to support you when you are too old to support yourself. And as a result, that the government has to make sure that that money is there. They can't opt out on it because they've already made a deal. Another way to think of it is mandatory spending is spending in which the government has already obligated themselves. They've already agreed to pay for certain services ahead of time on a long-term basis. So they have to do it. Discretionary is only agreed upon on a year-to-year basis. So let's see how these break down. So this is mandatory spending in 2017. As you'll notice, the biggest chunk of that money is spent on health care programs, a total of $1,141 billion, of which $702 billion goes to Medicare, which is free or reduced cost medical care for elderly Americans, those over 65. Now, $375 billion goes to Medicaid, which is free or low-cost medical care for those who are too impoverished to afford it. $64 billion is other. Now, Social Security. Now, you have to keep in mind of this, now this is a total of $939 billion. Now, of that, $796 billion is old age and survivors insurance. But remember, this is old age pension, so this means that the people receiving this are A, the original individuals who paid into the program. So they gave the government a section of their income for Social Security every paycheck of their working life. And so as a result, they're getting what's owed to them. Or their survivor's benefit. So what that means is that they are the spouse or dependent child of someone who paid into this system and has now expired. Now, $143 billion of that goes to disability insurance, which is paid to individuals who either A, have some sort of a physical or mental disability that prevents them from being able to work, or who have gained a disability as a result of something that's happened in their life, particularly a workplace hazard. So this can include individuals who are injured in construction jobs or things of that nature. I think certain elements of wounded veterans are covered under this. So if you're a soldier who got your leg blown up in Iraq by a landmine and now you can't work because your legs have been amputated, you may well find yourself as a beneficiary of disability insurance. Now, income security programs. $83 billion of that is for earned income, child, and other tax credits. This is money that middle-class families get off of their taxes for having children and things like that. $70,000 is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's the food stamps that everyone talks about, positively or negatively. That's what that is. That is $70,000. $55 billion goes to supplemental security income. $31,000 goes to unemployment compensation, and other is $55 billion. Federal, civilian, and military entitlements for retirement. $163 billion total. $101 is for federal employees who have retired. $58 billion military. 4 is other. Veterans benefits. So income security is most of it, $86 billion out of the $105 billion, with $19 billion being spent on something else. Then the other programs in the federal budget make up $130 billion. Now, let's talk about this negative balance you see here, the $253 billion. What that is fun. These are receipts for things such as Medicare premiums, benefits paid from other federal agencies toward federal retirement programs. These are things that are paid into the budget that help to offset it. Now, let's look at discretionary spending. So now this is the money that Congress has control over. So of this, $590 billion is spent on defense. $610 billion is spent on non-defense. So that is interesting to note that defense spending is the minority spending in the budget. Most of the money is spent on things other than the national defense. Now let's break down how that works. So of the $590 billion that's spent on defense, $245 billion of that is on operation and maintenance. That's just the working of the military, keeping the military going. Now, military personnel, so that's paying the salaries of the actual soldiers, sailors, airmen, and other personnel involved in the military. That makes up $138 billion. Now, procurement, that is to say, the recruiting of soldiers and personnel to work for the United States military, the money involved in that is $104 billion. Now, research, development, test, and evaluation, which is R&D, is only $68 billion. And the other is $35 billion, and that includes spending for military construction, so building new bases, family housing, and some defense-related activities by agencies other than the Department of Defense, such as the atomic energy activities of the Department of Energy. So the parts of the Department of Energy that are working on atomic equipment, nuclear equipment, those departments do receive some aid from the defense budget. Now, non-defense. The biggest beneficiary, now, the biggest single department to be a beneficiary of this budget is the Department of Transportation, which is in charge of things such as highways and railroads. Now, the Department of Transportation makes up a total of $93 billion. So that's more than the research and development for the military, but less than the procurement for the military, which I find interesting. Another program to find itself is education, training, employment, and social services. So all of those together make up $92 billion. That's $1 billion less than the Department of Transportation. Now, veterans benefits and services makes up $72 billion. Followed thereafter by income security, which is $67 billion, health, which is $60 billion, administration of justice. The administration of justice only gets $55 billion. Followed thereafter by international affairs. Now, the other $120 billion is split between spending on natural resources and the environment, general science, space technology, general government, community and regional development, agriculture, administrative costs, Medicare and Social Security, energy, commerce, and housing credit programs. All of that extra is $120 billion. So that's how it breaks down between the military and the non-military ends of budget. So, thank you so much for looking at this budget. For homework, please answer the first set of questions in your packet if you have not already done so.